Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Sunday. Excuse me for all the minor glitches and errors that we started out with this morning. Just trying to fix a few things here and there, and this way you guys can hear me without any major audio glitches, and hopefully without any major video glitches. So the third time seems to be the charm. What I thought I'd do today is basically take a look at the tropical storm season so far, and see where we're going with all of this. The activity, we are at the end of July. We're going to be moving into the seasonal peak over the next 6 weeks. Statistically, September 10th is the day of the statistical peak, but in terms of just broad activity, it's from August through October. I always look at that 10-week stretch for the most part, running from about the first week of August through the first 10 days or so of October, where you see the vast majority of activity going on in the Atlantic Basin. So, first thing I want to do is I want to start off with the past, because we really kind of need to go back and look at past seasons and go back a distance in terms of time, because a lot of things get thrown around, and these days where every event that occurs seems to be translated into in modern media as never having happened before. I think we need to do is just gain a little bit of perspective. So where I'm at right now is at the National Hurricane Center's weather website, and there is a data archive there that anyone can access, and you can take a look at these things and go back as far as you'd like. You can read old advisories. You can look at the old maps. What I'm doing here is I've gone into the part of the archive where we can see the activity in terms of decades. And what we're looking at here, these are the storms from the decade of the 1950s. So we're talking 1951 to 1960, that 10-year span. And you'll notice a couple of standout things here. One is the fact that there is only one hurricane that moves inland, and that is Hurricane Audrey. And it moved in as a major hurricane in southwest Louisiana, right along the Louisiana-Texas coast. This was back in 1957, and this was also in the month of June. You had a Category 3 hurricane, and you look along the East Coast, however, and you see a ton of activity in the Carolinas and on up into southern New England. 3 hurricanes impacted southern New England, two over Long Island, and then a slew of them impacted the North Carolina coast over the 50s. And in fact, if you look, Connie and Diane is actually missing from this. I'm just trying to. There should be a other hurricane in here in Diane in 1955, because they were basically back-to-back storms 4 days apart that came in to the North Carolina coast. And you can see that the 1954-1955 hurricane season, those 2 seasons back to back, were particularly very active years for the Atlantic side. Let's look at the 60s. And here's that website that you can access. You can access all this. So if you go to nhc.noaa.gov and go to the archives right there, and you can find it from there. And it's nhc.noaa.gov/data/ or / or whatever that is. So here we go. So let's look at 1961 through 1970. And here in this 10-year period, the activity goes to the Gulf of Mexico. Every storm impacted uh, well, you have Betsy, which impacted South Florida, and then eventually into southeast Louisiana and New Orleans. And actually, that became a generational storm where folks in southeast Louisiana would always point to that. And this was pre-Katrina. Now Katrina has become the storm that everybody points to. But all of the activity, and you had Camille in 1969, which was a Category 5 hurricane, one of only a couple of Category 5 hurricanes to come on to hit land as a 5. But again, all the activity here in the Gulf of Mexico. Now to 1971 to 1980. Again, this is a Gulf of Mexico period, although there were other storms. Now I'm understanding. So these are basically in terms of majors that I'm showing you, by the way, that have impacted land. There were other systems. So I mentioned Diane in the Carolinas in 55. Also looking at Hurricane David, which moved up up the East Coast in 1979. But the vast majority of major hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico in the 70s, now to the 80s. Okay. What happened? Where did I go? I lost my. Oh, sorry about that. So here's 1981 to 1990s. And in this 10-year period, you had two majors in the Gulf, two majors on the Atlantic side, Gloria in 1985 and Hugo in 1989 as a Category 4. And we'll jump to 1991 to 2000. And here's another 10-year period where it was kind of a mix. You have three in the Gulf, two in the Atlantic, and Andrew in South Florida. Again, here's another rare Category 5 hurricane making landfall. 2000, the last decade that we have to look at, so that's in the archive, is 2000 to 2010. Again, this is mostly, this is all majors in the Gulf of Mexico, but we all know that after 2005, there was a decided decrease in the amount of activity in the Gulf of Mexico. We went through a rather long period without seeing a hurricane making landfall in the Gulf. And here's, by the way, this is last year's, just a review from last year. So you had Tropical Storm Arlene in mid-April out in the tropical Atlantic, and then you have Brett and Cindy very, very close to each other in the month of June. A bit of a break, and then you had Don, which was in the Eastern Atlantic in mid-July, and then Emily, which formed as a tropical storm July 30th through August 1st, so had a very short life, and Hurricane Franklin, which was in the Caribbean August 7th and 10th. So we're up to name number 4 at this point. We've had two hurricanes. Referring to Beryl as basically a glorified severe thunderstorm in the tropical Atlantic, and Hurricane Chris, which for early July developed a rather impressive core for a Category 2 hurricane off the southeast coast and moved up into the North Atlantic graveyard. But we are actually at this point a bit above average in terms of activity given where we are in the calendar. It's not unusual to see activity. I can remember a number of hurricane seasons over the years where you get very little happening up until you get into the month of August. So there's nothing really strange here that we're seeing. So I'm going to take a look now at the tropical Atlantic, and we'll see what the kind of activity we're seeing that we're showing at the moment. Notice on the upper left, there's some turning going on, and that is off the southeast coast of the U.S., off the Florida coast and in the Bahamas. And that very broad counterclockwise turning extends all the way down into the Caribbean. That is a strong upper low, and it's creating, if you watch the clouds across the Caribbean moving from toward the east-northeast, across the eastern Caribbean and over the island. So you have very strong wind shear conditions going on there. Not something that you want to you would see with regards to tropical storm formation. In the tropical Atlantic, you've got this big upper ridge that sits up in the Atlantic that's spread out east to west. That continues, but when we look down in the tropical Atlantic itself, we see evidence of weak tropical waves out there, but nothing that looks like it's trying to develop. I did notice, again, I mentioned this late last week, there seems to be a bit of a general decrease in the amount of Saharan dust that's been present. And that is a problem for development, because with dust in there, it gets entrained in any kind of developing circulation, and it really holds back the development of convection, which is essential to the mechanics of a tropical system. But the decrease in dust creates a better environment than what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see where it goes where that takes us going forward. Now, I want to look at the ocean water temperatures, because this has been a subject for discussion. These are the actual sea surface temperatures as measured, and you can get this also at, you can find all of this at nhc.noaa.gov, and click just above the data bar, and the menu will come up, and you'll see a link to sea surface temperature anomalies. But the area of 26 degrees Celsius, that's where I would look at where you would probably see something try to develop. Any water temperatures under 26 degrees, which is roughly 79 Fahrenheit, is usually not too supportive of tropical systems getting going. It might nudge up a few subtropical systems, but 26C seems to be about the magic number, close to 80. And the area of 80 degree plus water is confined in the tropical Atlantic to the waters pretty much south of 10 degrees north. And you have to go to about 50 west in order to start to see an expansion of that 26 degrees Celsius or higher water east of the Leeward Islands and the Windward Islands. You get that. You got that 26 degree Celsius water, even a small pocket of 28C there down south of 10 north. But this is cooler than last year, and it's actually cooler than average. You go west of 60, and you have a large area of ocean water temperatures of 28 Celsius or higher. And that includes the southeast coast of the United States to just off the North Carolina coast. And in the Gulf of Mexico, we have 30 degrees Celsius water. That would be supportive of holding a Category 5 hurricane if you had the dynamics to develop a Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. But right now, we obviously do not. Now, where is this with respect to average? Well, in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies, and we've been seeing this since the spring months, when cold water has been bleeding down from Greenland down southward to along the west coast of Europe and off the African coast. We have a large and rather extensive area of below average ocean water sea surface temperatures. It's not below average by a lot, but it is significant. 1 degree Celsius is the difference between say 27 degree water and 25 degree water is large enough where it could impact the development of a tropical wave into a tropical depression versus a tropical storm. So these small anomalies are important where you're dealing with an area where ocean water temperatures may or may not be borderline. Interestingly, two things. The area of below average temperatures in the last month or so has actually expanded. It was basically confined to the water south of 20 degrees north, but it now seems to have pushed up almost to about 30 degrees north out in the Atlantic. The exception to that being the water temperatures that are off the southeast coast, the immediate southeast coast and of the U.S. and down into the Bahamas. You see the water temperatures in the Western Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico are about average. North of 30 degrees north to almost about 40 degrees north, actually north of 30 to almost to 45 degrees north, you see a pretty good, fairly large area of above average ocean water temperatures. sandwiched in between below normal temperatures to the north of that as you get to about 50 degrees north and further north. But you've got this this pocket there that's developed from 30 north to about 45 degrees north of above average water temperatures, and along 40 degrees north out east of 60 west, it's fairly significant. Some areas 2 or more degrees Celsius above average. So it's rather interesting to see this ocean water temperature profile, because we've noticed in past years where we've seen significant areas in the Atlantic side of above average ocean water temperatures. And the southeast coast of the United States has been one place in particular where we've seen large areas of above average ocean water temperatures, and it has impacted several tropical storms and hurricanes along the way. So this would certainly argue, going into August now, that as far as the Cape Verde system season is concerned, the ocean water temperatures being cooler than average may keep that a bit more subdued. Doesn't mean that we can't see systems come out of there, but they may be a bit weaker. They may take longer to develop. They may not be able to get going until they get, say, west of 50 degrees west, where we get above that 26 degree ocean water temperature threshold. Now, one of the things I want to look at with regards to the short term is whether we're going to see any kind of development in the tropical Atlantic. And what I've put up here is the upper air view of the North Atlantic. So you can basically see most of the United States all the way out to Europe and Africa and all of the tropical Atlantic. So what stands out here, and let me just give you 1 second. We're going to bring the paint box up. This is for later this week that we're looking at. And there's your map of the tropical Atlantic. And the thing that I'm looking at that's has got a little bit of my attention is this trough that is sitting out in the Atlantic that runs from a big system up near Iceland and extends southwestward. We also have, by the way, here's your big upper high that's off the East Coast. You've got another east-west flat little high that's north of the Cabo Verde Islands. And we have the new trough that is going to be dropping into the east. But this time around, that trough is about 5 degrees, is almost 10 degrees further west than the trough that we just went through. The old trough was sitting along the Appalachians. This one is closer to the middle Mississippi Valley. So I would suspect that, by the way, just as a note of our own weather here, that as we go through the week, not only are we going to have increasingly humid conditions again and very warm temperatures, but we'll probably see an increasing chance for daytime downpours and thunderstorms. But I do think that areas like Pennsylvania down and through Virginia and Maryland that got hit with very heavy rains for almost a week with not much of a break, we'll probably see some more of that. But I think they're going to be there'll be break periods, and the areas to the west may wind up getting a bit more. We're talking the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley closer to the trough axis. But let me get back to with respect to the tropics. The area that I'm going to watch is this area right in here, in between the two upper highs. You've got the one that's sitting, near just west of Bermuda, that's trying to build into the southeast, and then the flat high that is north of the Cabo Verde Islands. And that trough to the north, the bottom part of that trough is going to separate and drop southward. And from there, we could wind up with something that tries to develop in the subtropical Atlantic, rather than seeing something that will come out off the African coast or elsewhere. In fact, when we look at the GFS and the European on this, you'll start to see how that trough, the bottom part of that trough separates. And then as we move into the end of this week coming up and into this weekend, it looks like there might be something that may try and develop well to the, from that upper trough. And because of the big building high to the northwest, it's going to want to drop southwestward. Now, I just want to just say right off the bat, statistically, systems that have formed this way have, it is very, very rare that they wind up impacting weather along the East Coast. Here is, that's not the one I wanted. Hang on. So this is where we'll go to the paint box again. And I'll just show you how this, once that system opens up from the bottom of the trough, this is what you wind up with. And you've got the system out in the Atlantic that is going to try to respond to that upper ridge. So at least initially it drops southwestward and then westward. What it does and how far west it gets, who knows? And you know what? This is going to be one of those systems, another one of those systems that we're talking about initially being a cold core system. And as a result, they take a lot of time, okay? They take a lot of time to develop. They do not develop overnight. They can take days and days and days, and you may never ever see it. Sometimes you get these systems, they never really make the complete transition to a tropical, a purely tropical or even subtropical one. But that's the only one thing out there that has my attention, and even from that standpoint, it's not getting my attention in a very big way. This is when they come out of when they drop out of the Atlantic like that, they just take a whole lot of time. So I think that's where we stand at this point. There are there are issues certainly with regards to the ocean water temperatures, and they may stay that way. They could moderate some. They may get cooler. I don't know. So we'll see. But as always with these things, they will carry us on through some sense of mystery as we work our way through the month of August. And I'm sure there will be a few along the way that models are not picking up on. And all of a sudden one day you'll walk in and there's a model run that'll have a well-developed tropical system on it that it may not have seen on the run before or the day before. Okay, so let me run through. First of all, good Sunday morning to everybody. Hope everyone's enjoying their weekend. I did see a question earlier from someone when I was doing some of the test live streams. If as far as rainfall totals are concerned from what fell in and around the New York City area, including New Jersey, southern New England, and the Hudson Valley, those are available at the your local weather service websites, which you can access at weather.gov. They are listed under the public information statements, and sometimes the local offices will put a headline link on their homepage for the local office. Sometimes you have to kind of dig around to see where they actually have it on the site itself, but it's the public information statements where you would find that. Gary Rivard is on from Michigan this morning. Early fall up there eventually. I know. Michigan has got a solid reputation for being a really gorgeous place to come the autumn with the changing of the leaves. So keep us posted on that, Gary, when we get there. Timothy Veltman, Andrew kept its intensity because of the forward speed and relatively short stretch it crossed over Florida. Correct, and also the fact that the ocean water temperatures there were probably up at around 30 Celsius or higher off the Florida coast. And of course, the upper dynamics were about as solid as you're going to get with regards to the development of a Category 5 hurricane. Priscilla Mayu from Louisiana, remembering Gustav in 2008. The eye wall was supposed to pass right over where you live. Instead, it passed 6 miles to the east. Does make a huge difference. We're talking about a handful of miles, which is as we saw last year with Hurricane Irma, as it impacted the southwest coast of Florida. The change in miles, there was basically 10 to 20 mile shifts in the track that were happening when Irma was making its way up along over the Florida Keys and into Southwest Florida, and those 20-mile shifts made a huge difference in terms of the outcome. This is one of the reasons why you need to keep very fluid expectations in terms of what could happen and what does happen. Oftentimes they are two different things because of subtle shifts in hurricane tracks. Yes, Jason, one needed to restart one's modem, as one needed to restart one's video. All models, by the way, Jason, yes, that I looked at, the European, all models agree on that system out in the central Atlantic separating and dropping southward. It's been doing it for a couple of days. The European seems to actually do it in a slightly more vigorous way than some of the other models have. Ryan Ford, it looks like the waters in the Atlantic warmed up somewhat on the first sea surface temps map that I showed. Am I correct? What's happened is that you go back about 2 months ago, the area of below average water temperatures the anomalies themselves were higher. We had areas of 2 or more degrees Celsius below average. That has moderated to where most of the area is a degree or less below average, but the geographic area of that below average ocean water temperature profile has actually expanded in the last 2 months. It does impact, in some areas it's going to impact development. In some areas it is going to impact initial development. In some areas it's going to impact the speed of something that's trying to develop. It might have all the dynamics to get going. The ocean water temperatures could possibly slow it down. Okay, that's where you're going to see some impact, I think. Bach 505. This, I think, may be my video for today, since the weather seems relatively quiet. This is a good opportunity for me to take a break. I just wanted to focus specifically here on the tropics. Mystery Gamer, haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you on board. Delvin, you want the live stream schedule for this work week will probably be about the same as it has been. So evening live streams could happen on some nights as early as 6 and on some nights as late as 8 o'clock, depending on what is going on weather-wise at the time. Usually, I'll say it like this. Usually on nights where it's a busy weather night for me, the live streams will tend to be a bit later in the evening. So they'll probably be more like at 7 or 8 o'clock. When the weather is relatively inactive around where I am, they'll be around closer to 6 o'clock. And also, one of the things I try to do is I try to balance the data. In a sense, if we've got something that we're watching, let's say if we're watching a tropical system that might have some impact, I would probably want to push that live stream back closer to 7 or 8 o'clock versus 6 o'clock, because this way I could have the full new GFS model run to look at, just as an example. This is a problem when we're in daylight saving time because of the fact that the models come out an hour later, but it is what it is. But again, I really like to have all that data in front of me, so I might push the live stream a bit later. If there's a lot of severe weather going on in the east, I might want to do it when that severe weather would be peaking in activity, which is usually during the evening hours. So that could be another reason why I might push the live stream back closer to 7 or 8 o'clock. So if you got an idea of what the weather's going to be like on a given day, you can almost guess what time I'm going to do the live stream at night. But I try and schedule it on the channel as early as possible. Could the upper low in the Western Atlantic help to act as steering current for tropical systems. Well, if you do have a system coming out of the tropics and there's an upper low out there, the upper low might pull it northward. Is it under the trough that the upper low creates? That's another issue that you have to consider. Sometimes if the upper low is dropping southwestward, we've had instances where tropical systems have rotated counterclockwise around it. As the upper low drops southwestward, the system might initially work its way northward and then gradually turn northwestward and westward. There's a lot of factors that go into track. Of course, if it gets underneath the upper ridge and the upper ridge is building, we could see it move, would be moving more westerly. David Schwartz, next weekend is opening weekend for the New York Renaissance Fair in Tuxedo, New York, inviting everybody out. Okay, good. We'll plug it for you. As we just did, and remind me during the week, and we'll try and plug it again. Doug Johnson, good morning to you. Good morning from Catherine Marie in Florida. Let's see, Delvin, 9:30 EDT is 23. Delvin is our clock watcher for sure, watching sunrises, sunsets, and keeping us on our toes with Greenwich Mean Time. Yeah, but when we get into standard time in the wintertime, it's so much easier because the models are out an hour earlier, so it gives me a whole lot more flexibility, and I like having latest model runs. It always is frustrating if I've got to do a live stream knowing that there's a new model run that's coming out just at the time when the live stream is going to be finished. I would rather have that data. No. Right now, there is no hurricane threat, weather and low. You need to kind of remember, keep things in perspective. All I'm doing here is showing you where a system might develop, but there is nothing that on there that says it will develop. So you're implying, you're asking a question that really is not a question that needs to be asked right now because there's nothing there. I don't believe you ask. I don't believe you should be referencing tropical storms or hurricane threats until there's actually a system to reference. Okay, so if you have a tropical depression and it seems you seem reasonable and you seem reasonably confident as a forecaster that it would become a tropical storm, then you can address a threat, if any. Or if it's a tropical storm becoming a hurricane, you can address a threat, if any. If there's a hurricane on the map, you can address a threat, if any. Here, we have nothing on the map, okay? We just have something that shows, something where a system is going to drop and possibly separate from the flow, and then after that, maybe something could get going, but that's all we have. So there is nothing to think of. There's nothing to discuss otherwise. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here. It was pretty good for a Sunday morning, and being that the weather is nice, you want to spend it outdoors, which is a good thing to do. So just as a reminder, thanks everybody for being on my YouTube channel, and there is an Amazon link that is on the descriptor to this live stream and on the descriptor to this video if you're watching this later in the day. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon and its affiliated sites. And if you do shop on Amazon and you go through Ebates, you can get additional cash back. And we are a participant in the Ebates affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees from Ebates by linking to their website. So just want to just put that disclaimer out there for you as we're required to do. If you are new to my channel, welcome aboard. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is absolutely free. And you get notifications when we do videos, which is usually once a day, so that every once in a while I take a break. And today I think is going to be my break day. So we did the video this morning, so I won't be doing any kind of weather update. It's just too quiet anyhow, so there's nothing much to look at with respect to the local weather anyway. for tonight. So we'll give it a little bit of a breather, and we'll do it tomorrow. This week, the Joe and Joe Weather Show back on Monday, and that's on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, and you can also watch it on Joe Rayo's Facebook page, Joe Rayo Weather, and we usually do that around 9 p.m. Eastern time, and we have a lot of fun doing it, but you got to be on Facebook to do it, although I do upload the Joe and Joe Weather Show onto YouTube, so you can watch it in replay. Usually I try to get that done by 10 o'clock Eastern time. And Joe does occasionally join me here on my YouTube channel, as he did late last week when we had the severe weather running around. All right, have a great rest of your Sunday, folks. We will see you tomorrow.